Hello, my fellow YouTubers and subscribers, and welcome to my latest Planet of the Apes podcast, where today we delve into the third movie of the original series, Escape from the Planet of the Apes. This movie was released in 1971 and was directed by Don Taylor. And this is the movie that directly follows Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And this time we focus on Cornelius and Zira and another ape named Dr. Milo, who we've never seen before. And they have actually travelled back in time to the present day. Well, the present day of 1971, in which Taylor and Brent had travelled from to the future. So now they've gone back to the past. The world is shocked by the appearance of three talking chimpanzees who arrived mysteriously in a US spacecraft. They become the toast of society, but one man believes them to be a threat to the human race. And adding on to that, Cornelius and Zira and Dr. Milo are held in captivity until they go on trial. You can see the similarities between the first movie, and they have to basically explain what happens in the future. In that they met Taylor and Brent, and apes rule over man, and of course human beings that are putting them on trial don't like that. And one guy named Otto Hasslein, he is determined to kill Cornelius and Zira in order to evade the future, because obviously mankind wants to survive. So you can understand the argument there, and it's quite a revelation to Cornelius and Zira as well when they realise they've travelled back in time. But then the public start to idolise them; they become celebrities, and I think that's a very interesting way to take the story, and it actually makes Escape from the Planet of the Apes a very unique installment, because in some ways Escape is the most light-hearted of all of the Apes films. That's not to say it is a happy, clappy, all singing, all dancing film about apes. Of course not. There's definitely heartbreak, there's definitely tragedy, there's definitely drama. And I think, for my money, this is the best sequel of the original series. This, to me, I would rank just behind the first movie. It's not as good as the first movie, but it's way better than Beneath, and it's way better than Conquest and Battle. This is a solid sequel. I really enjoyed Escape. I had great fun with it, and I have to say the ending was very heartbreaking. I'm not going to lie, it was incredibly heartbreaking. I just really like the concept of the apes going into the past, going to a civilization where man rules over apes. Again, it's kind of the reverse of the first film. The perspective is now flipped. Even though some of the trial scenes, you could argue, are beat for beat the first movie. Although the difference being that the first movie was more the political commentary on how apes evolved over man, not knowing that it was Earth. Whereas now we know it's Earth. This is like, what will happen in the future? How will apes rule over man? So again, there's those kind of similar arguments there. It's still entertaining, but I suppose those trial sequences do feel a bit repetitive of the first film. However, the movie is definitely not as wacky or as weird as Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which I think is probably a good thing in the long run. To this movie's detriment, though, it does have some lazy writing, and this is in the form of the character of Dr. Milo. Now, we've never seen Dr. Milo before. He was in neither the first movie nor the second movie. He's just kind of turned up with Cornelius and Zira. He is there to explain the plot, essentially. He's an exposition tool, which is really dumb, because then they kill him off for no reason. Yeah, he gets strangled by a gorilla after he delivers his whole speech about how they've travelled back in time to the time when Taylor left. They've travelled back to Taylor's time, and it's and he's there to explain that to Cornelius and Zira, and then there's nothing left to do with him, so they kill him off. Hasslein explains in an interview about time travel and the never-ending kind of cycle of time travel. So it's explained again anyway. They've kind of hammered home the time travel point, so they're just repeating information. And the fact is, we as the audience know already that they've travelled in time, because we know that Taylor travelled in time in the first film and Brent travelled in time in the second movie. So it's just unnecessarily repeating information we really don't need to know. So and if you're going to kill the character off anyway, what was the point of even having him there? So, for my money, that's the weakest part of the film, is the Dr. Milo character, who's in the film for like 5 minutes. It's really stupid how he just gets taken out. I really did like seeing Cornelius and Zero become celebrities. It was interesting to see them take on a more human life and have that fame and fortune, whilst knowing that Hasline was on his mission to kill them to save the future, which I think is an interesting point, and it makes Hasline a good villain, because you can understand his point of view. He's trying to do what he's trying to do for the greater good, and he wants humanity to survive, and so he's going to play God and change the future. And it makes for a very intense and dramatic third act, where the tone really changes and the stakes really get upped, as Zira is actually pregnant and has child. So Cornelius and Zira and their child have to escape from the planet of the apes, as the title says. And there's a lot of heart to this film, actually. It's probably the most heartfelt of the first 3 films. We really see the emotional relationship between Zira and Cornelius improve. Like, their marriage is just so cute. I mean, especially towards the end, when they're both about to perish, she crawls over to him and lay with him until they pass, and it's very sad. I have to admit, there's a lot of emotion in the third act, and it really does work. If you've been following these movies so far, you'll have grown to really like these two. They are really warm characters, and they are lovely people. And it is kind of funny seeing Zira drunk on Grape Juice Plus. That is quite fun. Also, the music by Jerry Goldsmith is great. It's a little bit more light-hearted. It's not as dramatic as it is in the first 2 films. I mean, it gets a little bit more dramatic towards the end, but to begin with, there's definitely a different kind of tone to the music. And I think that's what is interesting about all the sequels. Even though you could argue the quality of the sequels varies, there's certainly a mixed bag in terms of quality. However, each of the sequels to the original film make themselves unique in some particular fashion. I mean, Beneath is weird as fuck, whereas Escape is fun as fuck, but also heartbreaking. So it's probably the most sentimental movie in the series thus far. And then Conquest and Battle are more epic, or they try to be. We don't know whether that actually pays off, but we'll find out next time. Special effects makeup is brilliant, as always, and I mean, Roddy McDowell and Kim Hunter, they just steal the show together as a pair. They really do steal the show, and their performances are honestly brilliant. And especially as they're doing different things now in this movie, they're becoming more human, and they're getting a lot of attention from the public, telling jokes. They're even using guns, and they're drinking. They're doing a lot of things that are not within their nature, and I think that's something that's really interesting to see. Again, a different perspective on what we've seen already. I do feel that the movie kind of spends a bit too long in the trial, as I said, and retreading some of the elements of the first film, like how the apes took over mankind and the future. All of the stuff that Taylor argued about in the first movie is kind of argued again in some different respects. So again, this movie's problem is that it kind of repeats things that doesn't need to repeat, and it does affect the pacing. The movie's not long, but at times you could feel like, okay, we could really do with getting on with this now. It really does feel like we don't need to do this again. Ricardo Montalban is in this movie as Armando, the circus owner who helps them with the baby swap. And that's a very neat twist at the end when we see Zero and Cornelius' actual son, Caesar, survives. And obviously we'll see more on him in the next 2 movies. Oh, and of course, I can't mention this review without talking about the 2 human characters, the 2 main human characters this time. We have Lewis, who is a doctor. He's a psychiatrist, much like Zira is, and he really befriends Cornelius and Zira, along with his partner, Natalie Trundy, who plays Dr. Stephanie Branton, although they call her Stevie for some reason. And they're delightful characters. They're so nice and they're so caring towards Cornelius and Zira. I mean, it does feel slightly repetitive in the sense that it's a reversal of the first film, because obviously in the first movie and the second movie, Zira and Cornelius helped Taylor and Brent, whereas this time it's the humans helping them. So, like I said, it does feel a bit like the first movie in reverse. And of course, the movie is quite light on action. It doesn't really have a lot of action in it, which is, which is fine. That wasn't the point of it. The third act on the sort of the boat is the most kind of actiony thing that happens, really. But again, I liked this film a lot because it was different, and it really had a nice perspective flip, despite some of the repetition and some of the meandering which was going on, and the Dr. Milo character, which was a bit of a pointless tangent to go on, but there we are. That's just my my verdict. So overall, I think Escape from the Planet of the Apes is a much better sequel than the previous one. It's not as weird and strange as Beneath, and things do make more sense. It just suffers from repetition of information and some lazy writing for the Dr. Milo character, but God, when this movie hits hard, it hits hard, and the emotion at the end is sad. If you're attached to these characters, which I would have thought you will be by now, given that they've been in 3 films, then you will feel the emotion. And, Roddy McDowell and Kim Hunter make such a great on-screen pair. They really do. And this is just also a ton of fun. It's a ton of fun. So I'm going to score Escape from the Planet of the Apes an 8 out of 10. It's very solid. It's a very solid sequel. Sadly, the quality doesn't really maintain as we move on to the 4th film, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. So stay tuned for my verdict on that. And until next time, thank you very much for listening. See you soon.